Here we are. All righty. Well, hello, everyone. I am Professor Christopher McLaughlin, and this is my Ghost Show. All right, that's our old theme. That's the one that I affectionately know as the theme from Chocolate Jones and the Temple of Dracula, the great lost blaxploitation horror classic. Let me play you the new one. In fact, if you guys, I love the new one, but if you people watching out there in internet land have a preference, here's the new one. See, that makes it look like we have a budget. It makes it look like we have a budget and stuff. And but credit to Mike Lafferty in both cases there.
That is Lafferty magic there.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Well, for those of you who this may be your first time here at the Ghost Show, I'm Professor Christopher McLaughlin, and among the most wonderful blessings in my life is I get to be the creative pit boss of Ghost Show Press. We are small, but we are mighty in our defense of creators' rights and sticking up for the creative arts, artistic freedom, and trying to get people into wonderful media they may otherwise have missed. We got our real start here doing transgressive horror, pointing people in the direction of odd and offbeat horror films that they should definitely still watch. And people like that, as you can probably tell by the fact that it's a real book that I can hold in my hands. This is not CGI. This is physical media. They loved us enough to come back and let us do subversive sci-fi to talk about weird science fiction movies that they should go ahead and watch. And we are in our first week of Kickstartering our third book here, Fantastic Flops. And let me go ahead and put that. There you go. And if you want to see more about that, you can go to that link and check it out. And hopefully find something in there. It's 40 great essays by 38 great writers and me. So hopefully you're going to see some great writing and learn about some great films you may not be familiar with, because by definition either critics buried them or audiences did, or both. And among the great writers who are not me are my guests for tonight. And first of all, I'm just going to go around the grid here as she slowly tries to sink out of frame. the incredible shrinking Alice Pang. Alice, tell us about yourself and what you wrote about for Fantastic Flops.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alice, or most people know me as Lala. You may have seen me on Banff here before on this channel. I kind of am just a geek and a nerd for a lot of different things. So for the third volume, they pulled me in, and I'm going to be doing Sucker Punch. It's a movie that I actually have a lot of connection to on various levels. And I recently realized every time I watch it, I realize something new about it. I'm also a neuroscience geek and neuroplasticity geek, so that really plays to that for me.
Yeah. And as a social scientist who has just made stuff up for 30 some years, mad respect for people that have like facts and stuff backing them up. And also another new addition to the wonderful Ghost Show cast right below us is one of the leading lights of comics, comedy, and gaming, a triple threat man. And in his spare time, he has an adorable daughter and the world's two absolute cutest dogs, Mr. Dan Taylor. Dan, say hello, tell the folks about what you're doing.
I'm going to have to introduce you to my 3 cats someday.
Oh, wow.
It's a regular menagerie around here. I am Dan Taylor. I am, I have an overactive imagination with a attention span of a gnat. So that's why I'm the so-called triple threat. I can never work on just one project at a time. And I'm lucky if I finish any of them. Don't worry, Professor, I've got this project under control. But yeah, that's why I'm the dungeon master of a live comedy Dungeons and Dragons show called Catacombs and Comedians that I perform at various comedy clubs here in Tennessee and Alabama, and looking to expand. In fact, we'll be at Gamehole Con in Madison, Wisconsin in October. And then I also write comic books, and I've got currently you may remember me from like 20 years ago. I'm the guy that Marvel and DC said they could not use the term superhero in the title of his book. It was called Superhero Happy Hour. So now it's called Hero Happy Hour, but now I'm working on a book called Star Marshals, and it is currently being crowdfunded on Zoop, and you can find it at starmarshals.com.
All righty. Well.
Oh, and I didn't tell you my movie.
No, go right ahead, please.
I am handling, obviously, since I am a dungeon master, I am handling Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. Probably the most recent movie in this book, I believe.
I'm thinking. You're thinking, yes. Yeah. This one leaned very contemporary. We had a lot of very recent films. It was a weird flip after transgressive horror, because it's like, I try to keep them in chronological order, and it's like you get halfway through transgressive horror and you're up to like 1975. so yeah, this is kind of like the alternative to that. And as everybody who knows me knows, that I love the few things I love more than old-fashioned Southern territory wrestling, and a live show would not be complete without a surprise run-in. And so that would be Shannon Watkins' music as she runs out of the dressing room with a metal folding chair ready to settle accounts.
Only thing I'm going to hit is this link. I tried the one that you had emailed and it didn't work, and I was just sitting there going, was it at 7 and I read it wrong? And then I messaged you and you sent me the right one, so I'll hit the internet. I won't hit anyone else here.
It's okay. It's okay. The very first time I had a computer repaired, I called on our mutual friend Hal Mangold, and Hal just looked at me when I asked him specifically what was wrong with the computer. He just looked at me in my face and he just looked me straight in the eye and said, "Computers are voodoo, man." And so that's how I've always viewed all this technology. Nobody really knows how it works.
I think that's true. That's true.
All righty. Well, for those of you that didn't go to college with me 35 years ago and have no idea what we're talking about, just joining us in her exclusive Predator Vision format is the one, the only, a 3-time veteran of Everyone's Gone to the Movies. You read and loved what she had to say about alien and transgressive horror, and you saw how she found cool new things to say about David Cronenberg's The Fly and Subversive Sci-Fi. And now, Shannon, you want to tell the folks a little bit about yourself and what you're doing for Fantastic Flops?
I am, first of all, not in actual Predator Vision. I am on a refurbished laptop that I did not know the camera only showed green until well after I got it, because I never do this stuff. And I got on one time. Fortunately, I know ahead of time I had a job interview that didn't pan out, but yeah, I had to explain to everybody on it like why it looked like this. They were amused, thank God. Anyway, I'm Shannon Watkins. I live in Galax, in the Galax environs in Southwest Virginia.
Greater Galax.
Do what?
The Greater Galax area.
I live in Woodlawn technically, and I know you're like, oh yeah, I know where that is. Great sushi. You're totally right. And I have known Chris since college, and this time around I am doing The King of Comedy, kind of a lesser-known Scorsese movie that is, in fact, really good, although it's hard to sit through. Not for Serbian film reasons, thank God, but from an emotional standpoint, like nails on a blackboard, so fun stuff.
Yes.
And I don't think I've met either of you before. I'm sorry. Lovely. Hi, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Shannon.
Possible, thank you.
Well, if you want to go back and rewatch the beginning of the show. No, I'm kidding.
I'm Lala.
Hi, Lala.
Hello.
Good to meet you. And
Nice
hello,
to meet you.
Dan.
Hello.
I love your I can't talk today for some reason, eyeglass frames.
Thank you. Yeah, orange is my brand, apparently.
I like it. It's a good color.
Yeah, and after the Kickstarter takes off, you could do the Elton John thing, and make them like more and more elaborate. And just a thought. Yeah. Well, but back on point. Oh, by the way, those of you folks that are working on cool stuff like Dan, if you want to drop some links into the chat, I can put them out there in the public so that folks who want to check out your other stuff can. I'll be happy to pass that along, so
Cool.
and so that people can see the other cool stuff that you're doing.
And I just want to bring up, the books might not be CGI, but I'm still not sure Christopher isn't CGI.
I've met him in person. I can assure you he's 100% CGI.
Well, you know, Carl. Whenever people ask Carl Sagan if he believed that flying saucers and UFOs were really alien visitors, Sagan always said, like, if you had the technology to like go faster than light and traverse all these distances, and it was like you had that much technology, why would you bother coming here? You know, and so my attitude is, if somebody had the time and the wherewithal to do something CGI, why would you do me? You know, you could do like a virtual Betty Page or something, you know, but I appreciate the thought. I appreciate the thought.
You, Mr. Professor, have gone viral for being in front of your class. Just from being in front of your class, you went viral. So don't say that you're not worth CGI. I happen to know there is a viral video that one of your students took floating around the internet.
Well. To be fair, that kid was asking for it, and I'm sure he will heal fast because he's young. All righty. Well, okay. Before I get myself in any more trouble, okay. So I want to go. I'll just go around and give you guys a chance to talk more about your movies and what drew you to it, and why people should watch it, and why people should back our project. So Alice or Lala, does one of you want to stand up and talk about why Sucker Punch deserves a second look? And while you're doing that, I'm going to put links to the cool stuff that Dan is doing out there in the public comments, so you folks can check that out. So go.
Sure. So first off, I've only ever watched a non-extended cut of Sucker Punch once. Every other time has been extended cut. So take that along with what I'm saying. But I know that a lot of critics, when the movie came out, had issues with it being over the top while it being kind of I'm trying to put this nice. Well, they said that basically there was no plot, no character development, and, you know, basically pooped all over it. Every time I watch the movie, I see something new. And to me, there's a lot going on there. First of all, it handles a subject that is often stigmatized in our world, which is not just trauma, but abuse, and how somebody handles abuse and how a survivor may get through it. For those of us who do play D&D, I know a few of us here play D&D and are gamers, and people who watch the show tend to be gamers and comic book writers or comic enthusiasts and such. We all understand the therapy of not just escape. It's not just escapism when we retreat into our minds and create other worlds. Rephrase and reframe things. This is something that if you deal with physical therapists, if you deal with healthcare professionals, if you deal with psychologists, you will hear rephrase, reframe, or some of them do reframe, rephrase, which is the idea that you take what you have suffered from, pain, etc., and you take power over it by rephrasing how it works. So let's say, let's say you messed up your hand, and instead of saying, ow, it always hurts, you rephrase that and say, okay, well, I have power over this. I have power over my fingers. My fingers are going to move. You stop instead of being afraid. So if you have, let's say, arachnophobia, psychologists would say it's actually really good for you to face it in a D&D game. Why? Because you get to be that big giant barbarian that and whacks the giant spider that's as big as a house. That empowers you. And it can help over time shift your perspective on situations. In the extended cut, I don't know, are we supposed to give spoilers to the movies that we're talking about?
I always tell people, if it's important for you to make a point about the movie, go right ahead. Otherwise, we kind of want to draw people in who haven't seen these movies already, in part. So but if you need it to make your point, go for it. Okay.
So in other words, I will keep that in mind on adjusting some of the things I write into my thing to reduce spoilers. What I will say is that the movie takes place in multiple realities. Now, we have, as human beings, this belief that we are all sharing one objective reality. Neuroscience has proven us very incorrect on that. First off, you think that you see color. Shannon is green. Green doesn't exist as a color. We simply perceive light that fluctuates at different wavelengths, bouncing off different surfaces, interacting with different elements in our environment. And then our eyes take it and send it to our brains. Our brains say, well, I need to figure out how to interact with this in a way that I understand. So let me put color to it. A great example that went viral all over the internet is the white and gold or blue and black dress. Well, how that works in neuroscience, if you've ever seen it, is the fact that it actually, it's because our brains are functioning in a way that is trying to draw information that would be useful to us. So what they've learned is two things. If you, from that picture, if you are someone who spends a lot of time indoors under artificial light, you are more likely to see blue and black. If you are someone who spends a lot of time outdoors, due to the way that your eyes take in sunlight and natural light, you are more likely to see white and gold. Now, both of them though, if you put it that same exact picture with the exact same pixels, and I was actually just recently revisiting some old documentaries I was watching, and they actually had this video linked where they talked about if you take the exact same pixels on the dress and you put that in Photoshop, one with blue, washing the wearer out to blue and washing the background into blue tinted, the dress will change to white and gold. They will literally show you. And then if you change it to the background to tint yellow or more natural lighting based colors, white and slightly whited out and yellowed out colors, the dress will blue and black, no matter what your brain's functionality and a customization for indoor outdoors. Another example is our ability to hear different frequencies more commonly. There are always audio tricks that you see online and these visual and audio illusions where some people hear one word, some people hear another. And that's because people cue in at different wavelengths, because that's what our brain's more used to. Some people, due to their environment, they need to hear higher pitch. Some people need to hear lower pitches, and finding that balance while you can just adjust modulation or filter one out and the other word's still there because it overlaps. So neuroscience has shown that we only process about 1% of our environment. And therefore, what is to say that what we are basically making this giant hallucination. So what's to say one reality is more valid than another if it drives your hope, if it drives healing, hope, processing of trauma, and further something amazing, which is what Sucker Punch to me is about. It is about reframe, taking control of self-agency, making the world better. Okay, sorry, I got geeked.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. I just it seems like you prepared something for this.
No,
like,
no,
crap,
I geeked out on this kind of
topic.
stuff. No, I did not prepare anything.
Well,
I just started
with all
talking.
due it's all right. It's all right. With all due respect to neuroscience, I choose to believe that Shannon is really here to hunt us humans for sport. And so on that note, I'm gonna turn it over to her and let. Shannon, I just got through watching Scorsese's After Hours on 4K, and he opens up talking about he's just found out that they've canceled production on Last Temptation of Christ 3 weeks before they were to start. He has nothing going on in Hollywood. He's getting dressed to go out for New Year's Eve dinner. He has Entertainment Tonight on in the background just to have something on. And they do this big curtain reveal of their flop of the year, and it's King of Comedy.
I did not realize that. Oh my god! I have to go watch that again.
He talks about kind of wanting to die after that. So I didn't know if you'd ever heard that story or not, but I thought it'd be on point for what you're doing. So please tell us why you're doing King of Comedy.
Well, it just I love Scorsese anyway, and I don't know like every single thing. I still have not to this day have not seen The Last Temptation of Christ, which sounds like a gross oversight, but it probably is. But as I like to say when people ask me about that and The Passion of the Christ, I'm like, well, I read the book, so and which is a lot funnier if you were raised like evangelical, which I was. But anyway, I have to tell you too, I didn't know I was going to be talking about my book. I was just like, you said just drop in, and I thought, Oh, he's going to talk about movies, and the rest of us are just going to nod because that's what I was prepared to do.
Well, I'm a professor. I can call on somebody else if you like.
I will say too, I don't know why the tilt in the background. I keep trying to adjust my computer, and it's not going. And it's like this off kilter thing that belongs in a Batman villain's lair. Anyway,
I put it on purpose. You just ran with that.
Sorry. Anyway, okay, I'll be serious about my film. I love King of Comedy. It is just, it's weird to me, and I'm trying not to make too many points that I'm going to make in my essay, which means I'll probably make all of them. But I don't have new material. I'm sorry. It's just, I mean, like, you look, it was the early, oh God, I can't even remember. This is terrible. I don't even remember the year. It was like early
82.
80s. Thank you. And, of course, buzz lasted longer back then. The internet didn't exist. So I think Robert De Niro, to a lot of people, was still like the thinking person sex symbol because, he was very hot and raging bull. He was also an abusive character, but you could get away with that better than and still be considered sexy. Mm-hmm. And he was, physically fit and just very handsome face. And I mean, it was just career suicide to do this role because Rupert Pupkin, which is a great name for like a nebbish guy or just a nothing kind of a person. Rupert's not a bad name. Pupkin's not necessarily a bad name. You smash them together and it's just like, he had probably what was a standard haircut for the time, but it just looked it just reads nowadays super dorky. He had a mustache that did nothing for him. And he just played the most grating, irritating person. And he was a guy who really wanted to be on I think it was the Jerry Langford show. I watched this the other day and I still don't remember, but Jerry Langford, played by Jerry Lewis, I thought was a really interesting choice because I've never thought he was all that funny, although apparently Martin Scorsese did. So you're dealing with someone else's taste there too. But he's like a Johnny Carson type back when Johnny Carson was huge. Late night talk show host, lots of, glamour and glitz, and he's very famous. And that's what Rupert wants. And he performs like he's on his own talk show down in the basement every night, and he's got like cutouts of all these celebrities, like standees of all these celebrities, and he talks to them and addresses them. And his mother, who is played by Catherine Scorsese, who was Martin Scorsese's mom, who was in a lot of his movies, yells down at him to shut up periodically. So he's kind of, as a grown up and gotten out of his mother's basement, and this was in an economy where you could do that and you could go live on your own. So it's not like, well, we just can't help, but he can't afford it. And he gets into a lot of trouble trying to get a hold of Jerry, stalking Jerry, making a lot of unwelcome advances in Jerry's professional and personal life. And he just behaves with this absolute cluelessness and arrogance, and you want to feel sorry for him, but it's very hard to do that. And it's a lot about it, and it's very relevant today, especially today, because there's more ways to get a hold of people. Just about the limits of hero worship and being a fan, and what do people who are famous owe us? And, if you push hard enough, are you being horrible and entitled, or do you have ambition? And is there really a difference depending on what results you get? Because I don't want to give the end away, but it did not go the way I thought it would. And I had honestly forgotten about it when I started to write the essay. And I was like, and this is what happens in the end. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, I'm totally wrong. I remembered that wrong. And now it's stuck in my head. But sometimes people who should not be rewarded are rewarded, and people who didn't do anything to deserve the punishment they get punished, or at least have not great things happen to them. I'm making it sound like a Saw or something. It's not like that. It's nothing. It's very low key. The thing that makes it so hard to watch is that in these moments when he's behaving in a fantasy-based manner, like, oh, I'm famous, or I would be great at being famous and charming and having people love me, he's not acting so over the top you could just divorce yourself from it and laugh like, this is stupid. It's just overdone. He does it exactly the way you or I would have a fantasy about meeting our favorite celebrity. Like if you're in the shower and your mind's just going into autopilot and you're like, oh yeah, I'd love to meet so-and-so. And I would imagine, and even down to like details that are really kind of low key. So it's not like a big over the top experience. Like you have a little chit chat with your person, or, they would think you were funny, but not like overly funny, but you could tell they'd appreciate you. Very subtle stuff. And he does that. And then he just goes in the next scene, he'll just do something absolutely horrible. And you're like, I have to empathize with this guy, and I don't want to empathize with this guy. And it really gets under your skin in a realistic way, just like a Splinter. It's crazy.
Yeah, all my celebrity encounters are like Randy Quaid in Vegas vacation when he meets Wayne Newton and just sits down and gets 6 inches away from him and goes, "Do you have a bodyguard? I'd die for you." So yeah, it's kind of my standard celebrity greeting there. All righty. Well, okay, so I'm going to hand this over to Dan Taylor, who's going to talk about his movie, and I am going to put up links for other cool stuff that he's done. So go, Dan.
Well, I'm not prepared to go as deep as those two went, but Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves is almost the perfect storm of a D&D session, of trying to have a successful D&D session that goes wrong. I mean, the movie itself is a wonderful, fantastic, fun movie, and by all accounts, on paper, Dungeons and Dragons should have done very well. Large fan base, one of the better Chris's of Hollywood starring in it. Genre movie, special effects, even Hugh Grant thrown in for good measure. But alas, it didn't quite work out as planned. Now, a few things may have come into play. It may have been the Wizards of the Coast little debacle that they had just the months before the movie was released with their licensing and SRDs and Dungeons and Dragons as far as the game goes. It was shuffled around schedule-wise, much like most Dungeons and Dragons games are. You can never get all the players together to get together at the same time to go and watch it or to play the game. And the fact that it was a D&D movie, is there still, even though we all, Dungeons and Dragons became even bigger and better during the pandemic, is there still a stigmatism attached to Dungeons and Dragons as a nerd type of thing? I saw the movie twice in the theater before it was officially released. So, and thank God I did, because it did not last long in the movie theater when it came out. Those damn Mario Brothers. But anyway, the way I will look at it, as now that I am a professional dungeon master, because I've actually collected checks to DM games on comedians, and I have a business card that says Dungeon Master. I'm going to look at it as a dungeon master would be, as putting together a game, and what worked, what didn't work, why it should have worked, maybe explain why it didn't work. But by all accounts, I mean, I will recommend it if you play Dungeons and Dragons, have ever played Dungeons and Dragons, or if you just like fantasy movies. This is a hell of a flick to check out. And I've got no, neuroscience or anything involved in this.
Well, let me ask you something. I know you will know. How does it compare to the original batch of D&D films? Okay,
now that is something that may have plagued it as well, though. I think most people may have forgotten about those movies, other than the professor, who doesn't forget about any movie.
I like those movies.
Yeah, I mean, the first Dungeons and Dragons movie with Jeremy Irons that came out, and one of the Wayans brothers, etc. Laura Birch, I remember, was in that as well. It is so much better. I mean, if there was, now, I might upset some grognards out there, but it's kind of like, first edition compared to fifth edition. First edition is very difficult to get into. It's very, it's got a thing. It came out at a period where it was kind of, not as accepted as Dungeons and Dragons now. Fifth edition is a lot more broader. You can take in bring in a bigger audience now. There's more range. There's a lot of different people. It's much more inclusive as compared to being exclusive, trying to figure out the first edition. So that's how I compare it. The new movie that just came out is much more inclusive compared to the original movie, which is much more exclusive as far as D&D fans go.
Well, there's been multiple D&D movies, so I'm actually trying to figure out which one you guys are talking about, because
the one that got released theatrically with one of the Wayans brothers.
And then there's been a couple straight to video after that.
Yeah, there was one in
because
2000.
there have been a lot of them, and to be very honest, many of them are terrible. But there are a few that I have seen stuck in my mind that I think were pretty decent. And I also think the original old cartoon is cool. The bits that I've gotten to see, I have never gotten to see the whole. But the old cartoon's awesome.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I only saw previews of them. I did not see the ones before this one that just came out. Were the other ones were they very serious? I mean, this movie, like you said, it's like a real D&D campaign. Like everybody screws everything up, and it's in the story. There's comedy and it's funny. In the original ones, I seem to the previews.
They took
I don't even remember which ones. They were like trying to be Lord of the Rings, basically, like dead serious about it.
It's kind of a cross between Lord of the Rings and the original Conan the Barbarian. They took it very serious. There was not a lot of chuckles, and there was not a lot of joking around.
They definitely took themselves pretty seriously in the older ones, and from what I understand, I have not seen the new one because I'm one of those boycott people. And I almost was okay. Like I was close to dropping my boycott. And then I was really glad I didn't because the Pinkertons thing then came up. So I'm sorry. I'm still not watching it. I'm not going to watch it for a while because if they're going to send Pinkertons for their screw up, I'm just not going to. No money.
Okay, I want to argue this right now. Okay, I'm taking off my gloves. The movie has nothing to do with the Pinkerton magic card thing. It's nothing. The people who did Wizards of the Coast Hasbro have nothing to do. They licensed pretty much the movie out to get made. I worked on back in the days. I was an editor for the Transformers comic book, and I was editor on the Transformers comic book adaptation of the movie.
But the people were already paid, and therefore the people that were involved were already paid for it. So I'm not feeling like I'm taking money out of their pockets. However, people who are dropping ratings are preventing basically WotC from getting further licenses and whatnot at a better rate later. So therefore, it is still to that degree. I don't feel like I'm taking money off of Paramount or the people or Chris Pine's pocket or anybody's pocket because they were already paid for their work, the cameramen, etc. But what it does hurt is when WotC goes to the negotiating table for future movies, they're not going to get as great of a deal. So that's where I'm like, it kind of hits.
And you're hurting my chances of seeing a sequel to a movie I loved.
I'm sorry.
They were literally one ticket away.
One ticket away.
I think will we get a sequel in the theaters? Maybe, probably not. Will we get a sequel on Paramount Plus where the movie is doing rather well in streaming? We've already got a D&D TV series in the works. We'll probably be fine. We'll probably see more Dungeons and Dragons media projects.
And keep in mind, Dan, we live in a world where Tron 1 lost money, Tron 2 lost money, and what are we getting? Tron 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
there's enough of a cult following.
But here's
not enough to make money, but
and also as far as D&D movies, there's also
people who said, I'm not going to watch it because of the Wizards of the Coast thing, or I'll wait till it comes on streaming. I'm not going to go put my $15 to $20 in the theater to go see it, and that's fine. I don't go see a lot of movies anymore. I was a film major, and I hardly see any movies anymore in the theater. Where was I going with this? I have no idea. Oh, but then they have seen it, and I'm so happy to do I Told You So dance when they say it was a goddamn good movie. So I cannot wait till you see it, and I can do the I Told You So dance.
I have no doubt that it was a good movie. I enjoy a lot of them, even if they're not very good ones. Just being a D&D player, for most of my life, I'm not going to go into how many decades that is. It makes me feel very happy. I do agree with you that there are a lot of reasons why people didn't go see it, including the fact that it is still stigmatized. I have a lot of friends who are not at all geeks that were like when the superhero movies started coming out and became really mainstream, they went and watched a couple of them. And then they came back and said, oh, now I totally understand you. I'm like, really? So you went and actually read any of the comic books? No. I'm like, okay, so I start talking about the characters. Oh, no, we didn't see that one. But if you don't see the full continuity, you don't understand what happens and why Iron Man's the way he is. So therefore, that movie you're just referencing doesn't make sense to you. He's like, but this character's so hot. And I'm like, okay, that's nice. You have fun with that. And those same people, that same couple that I'm talking about, refused to see the D&D movie because that's just geek. And I'm like, Yeah, so you still don't understand me. You really don't.
Even if
it's
you
like
don't watch,
watch Big Bang Theory, and are like, I totally get you now. I'm like, no, you don't.
All right, Shannon, you want to pipe in?
I'm just saying, even if you don't read the comic books, but you like the comic book movies, I mean, that's geeky. I mean, it's all kind of like extended geek universe to me. And I freely admit there are tons of comics I haven't read. I am more. I've gamed, I've read comic books some, I've read some sci-fi, consumed various iterations of stuff, but I'm like, by no means do I have a comprehensive knowledge. I am closer to being those people than I am to being probably anybody else on this panel. And the thing is, I don't understand why these other people are looking at comic book movies like, oh, those are great, and then like saying, oh, D&D is weird. I'm like, it's the same. It's none of it's real. Come on, like not that kind of real, but
see, and that I have no problem with because there's a wide gambit.
Alex, can I put in one quick one here? Thank you. Well, if you think about it, it is weird because it requires you to like deal face to face, at least on a Zoom level, if not actually being in the same room with your fellow human beings, rather than just staring at a black mirror endlessly and doing your own thing. So yeah, the fact that there's a social component to it, that's what's getting weirder and weirder and weirder with as time passes. Wow, you're going to do something that requires another person to be involved. So yes, sorry. Good.
And Shannon, I just want to say, if I made any statement that made it sound like there is not a wide spectrum of geekery, I did not mean that at all. I just mean that
I
said
agree with you. It's weird that people will see one thing that's like fantasy, sci-fi, whatever, and be like, okay, that's acceptable, and then go, ooh, that's weird over there. I mean, there's stuff I don't partake of, but I understand why people do.
Well, the couple I'm speaking of, they've watched like 4 movies out of the MCU only because of certain actors and actresses that they find extremely attractive. And then they have no actual understanding of continuity, but they just had fun. And that's great. It made it mainstream. That's fantastic. But when they come to me and say they have a complete understanding of who I am now and why I like it, I don't like it for the same reasons. I just don't. I don't like it for the same reasons at all.
Yeah, I mean, comic book wise, Thor is my least favorite Avenger, but on the movies, damn, that Chris Hemsworth is an attractive man. So I agree. I mean,
somebody once asked my wife who her favorite superhero was, and she said Chris Hemsworth's abs. Like, I will never come up with a better answer than that.
Those are Australia's abs. I have one quick question for you guys, because I am like the least. I just watch stuff and I'm like, that was fun. Infrastructure is like a mystery to me. If I actually watched Dungeons and Dragons when it came to Redbox, because I was trying to avoid movie theaters because of COVID for like a super long time, and I still haven't really gone back because I work nonstop. If you rent it from Redbox, where does that fall on the spectrum of, and I'm not trying to start anything, I'm just asking, like going to the theater and how that money goes versus how does the money like boycott? I mean, does this just go to the creators? Does it go to WotC? Like who? I don't know how that breaks down. If anybody knows, I'm not really sure.
Well, it depends on the specifics of the deal, but Redbox gets their cut, the distributor gets their cut, the studio gets their cut. If an actor has enough clout, they're going to get points in the movie. They're going to get a little something out of it. But yeah, I mean, really, you paying money to see a movie just really kind of determines what the high end people and the studios are going to get, and whether or not they want to do any more with this particular IP for a while.
So the data from rentals does factor into it, but maybe not as much as it does from
down the line. It certainly can. Like I'm going to show my age even more than my appearance and my movie collection do. But there was the classic tale of the film that got a follow up because the VHS or the DVD did well, or it did really well on pay cable or whatnot. Like there's this forgotten film called Eddie and the Cruisers, which did nothing in the theaters, but like it was on HBO and Showtime in the early and mid 80s almost as much as Beastmaster. And it wound up getting a sequel down the line because of how it did on pay cable.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. Fun fact on the side, nothing to do with anything we're talking about. Again, I mentioned
the D&D movie. I wonder if it's not going to wind up being like Clue. It's like within 10 years, they'll be doing movie parties for it, and like, oh, this is great. Why did people not get this?
I very well see it playing in a lot of arts movie theaters with it's D&D night. A lot of cosplayers, a lot of You think they what and it's I mean and I will say and I will admit that the whole Hasbro's approach with Dungeons and Dragons was a major clusterfuck of epic proportions. I mean, no doubt there. But I've played D&D for over 45 years, showing my age. And I don't live and breathe Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, I'm not making a living off my Dungeons and Dragons comedy shows. But I do have a personal attachment to Dungeons and Dragons and what it got me through life. So in a weird way, I'm like a grognard in the weirdest sense. Yes, I'm devoted to Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm not devoted to first or second edition. I'm devoted to Dungeons and Dragons as a whole and as a general. And I think anything that Dungeons and Dragons has done for people on this planet that we live on greatly outweighs whatever the debacle is that happened with third-party products and their licensing. And it may have been a cautionary tale. I don't know, maybe as a creative type, and I'm speaking as a creative person myself because I have created third-party products, and I'm struggling to get my crowdfunded comic book done and all this stuff. And this may be a discussion for a later time, and I don't know if I should need to even bring it up now, but since it's coming up. Maybe we should also look at the fact that maybe too many creative types depend too much on other intellectual property or other license arrangements than they should. Now, I'm not saying, you shouldn't. I'm just saying maybe that's another thing to explore. And it has nothing to do with my essay and what I'm writing about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm just getting it off my chest.
Alice, you've been in the on-deck circle for a while. Go.
I was just going to say what you brought up. Actually, it's a great statement to what I was mentioning earlier about rephrase, reframe, and about using it as therapy. Because I am, for those that do know me, who apparently some people watch this. I don't know, watch me really seriously. People that know me know that I am a hardcore gamer. I'm an omni gamer, but at its core, I'm a tabletop role-playing gamer. And I say that rather than D&D because while I love D&D, I love many systems. And so I am very, 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 very devoted to the hobby of tabletop role-playing games, primarily in the style of Dungeons and Dragons. And for those who don't know, outside of like the official Dungeons and Dragons movies, there are IPs for different D&D-esque movies, like Midnight, for example. Midnight is a setting written for Dungeons and Dragons through various publishers and editions. Now there's a 5th edition one that's associated with it. And there was a movie and it was not my thing. I'm sorry. Not my thing. I tried 4 times to watch the Midnight, but it's What If Sauron won? A setting where, it's dark and horrible, and it's what if Sauron had won in The Lord of the Rings. And I'm actually playing in a Midnight game. So, but yes, you mentioned, and you choked up a tiny bit, that it got you through, a lot of things in life. And for me, yes, that does, because it lets you recompartmentalize, redistribute, change a lot of, take self-agency. And that's something that that hobby does for a lot of us, is it allows us to take self-agency in places that we don't normally get to go. So I completely respect and understand that, because I myself am really, really a hardcore gamer and hardcore tabletop.
No, and I'm more of a total tabletop RPGer than just a Dungeons and Dragons player. I've got, do you see those books behind the professor there? Are those movies behind the professor there? I've got that in RPG books. So. Oh
no, I've got same here. We've got actually an entire room devoted to that, and we've got more than that. And we actually have split it into other rooms. But yes, our house looks like a game store. Like everybody that comes and looks at our house looks like a game store, because we have entire room, all 4 walls covered with games, and stacks of them on furniture, because we don't know where.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I'm the
Thank
same
goodness
way.
for digital, because my digital collection does not have that problem, but we still need to sort it, which is pretty terrible.
Yeah, this is only half of the collection, and this is not showing the part that fell off the back of a truck. Respect for your game collections. Mine. I had a Viking funeral for mine, so respect for people that are still doing the dice thing. But okay, all right. So we're down to our last 15 minutes. So one of my standard questions, because it fascinates me at least, is would anybody like to talk about like what when you were narrowing it down? Did you have any close runner-ups, films that you almost did? Alice, were you always on Sucker Punch, or was there like a bronze and a silver in that?
So I'll be very honest. I rarely keep track of how movies did in box office or whatnot. Mm-hmm. So when you were saying, "Hey, Alice, you want to write for this?" and I'm like, "I probably not." Because I don't know. I honestly don't know. And so I talked to another person that's writing for the book, Aid, and Aid's like, "Well, I was going to do one of your favorite movies, so you should do that because then I could do my another favorite movie of mine." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, Sucker Punch. It did horribly." I'm like, "It did?" And what's sad is that after I picked and after it announced, I learned that another movie I absolutely love did absolutely terribly, and I would have done that movie had I had any clue, because there is a movie that I tell everyone to go watch if possible. Brandon and I, we, due to many years ago when Netflix was doing the DVD mailing, they had this 5-star rating system. So Brandon and I got really into rating every movie we watched. And over the course of over like 3,000 movies in various collections that we've watched with histories, we learned that we only had about 25 5 stars. And The Fall from 2006 was one of our 25 or 27 5 stars. The movie, sorry, what, Shannon?
I said I love that one. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So I did not realize until after I picked this movie and I was all locked in that it was an indie film that had a budget of 30 million, but around the world, it only made 3.7 million.
Ow.
And that's why you can't even find the movie anywhere. But it is the most beautiful movie. And I do not want to spoiler it. And if you want to go watch the movie, do not go read Wikipedia about it, because in the first 2 paragraphs on the Wikipedia, it gives away the ending, the last 7 minutes of the movie. So do not do that. But I will say that if you are someone who likes, Arabian Nights, 1001 Tales, that kind of thing, it has very much that vibe where you deal with going through this fantastical journey with a little girl, and then their storyteller, and you learn what the depths and details and the end goal of the storyteller is towards the end. And it is beautiful. I really should have done that. I didn't know, but I do love Sucker Punch. I really do. So.
Okay. All right. So Shannon, before the young Robert De Niro swept you off your feet, did you have a runner-up?
I don't remember that I did. And we talked about this, I think, back in March, I want to say. And I'm sorry, I'm like one of those people. What I had for breakfast yesterday is hard to remember, and I eat the same thing every day. So I don't think I had anything else in particular in mind. I know we talked about it and that one came up, and I think I may have just watched it again. I've got not a comprehensive, but a Scorsese box set. And I know, actually, I think I had thought about but didn't mention New York, New York, which was the other big one.
Yes.
Which the song comes from, and no one remembers it. And it's just, or if I recall correctly, the song comes from that. And it could have been about half hour shorter, and that's like De Niro again and Liza Minnelli. And that was when I think Scorsese was having a fling with Miss Minnelli. Ooh, old gossip and scandal. But it's a good movie. It's worth a watch because it just kind of deconstructs all those old like romantic Hollywood musical tropes in a really skillful way. But unless you've ever said to yourself, you know what, I want to see a movie with Robert De Niro romancing Liza Minnelli that skillfully deconstructs all the old Hollywood musical romantic tropes, you probably don't want to see it. But if you do, that's where you want to start.
And if you want to see that, you're probably reading our books anyway.
That's also very true. Yes, I think Marty owes all of us just so much money at this point. He won't return my phone calls. I'm gonna have to pull a Rupert Pupkin and show up at his country home. in upstate New York, it's just going to happen. Sorry, you left me with no choice. Me and my fictional girlfriend are going to show up there. So,
if you have some time to watch the special features, if you have the disc that has the cast reunion, it's great. It's great because like De Niro and Scorsese are trying to have like a serious discussion of film as a medium. And meanwhile, Jerry Lewis is sitting next to them. He's doing that thing where he puts a whole glass of water in his mouth. And like stand there with a glass of water hanging out of his mouth. He's like, come on, these people want some shtick. Like, I respect Jerry just still being Jerry. So, all right. And Dan, I'm sorry. And Dan, you're so passionate about D&D, the movie, but did anything ever pop on your radar briefly? Or
I'm going to be honest here with you. When you mentioned how you're doing this book of flops, and I made a comment on it on the post, I was just being a smartass, cracking wise, saying, "You mean like Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves?" I did not know I'd end up writing an essay about it.
That's tricksy.
So, yeah. So when you said, "Yeah, sure, go do it," I'm like, "Oh crap, okay." I guess. So I've become more invested in the movie now that I realize that I have to do an essay on it as a flop. But no, like I said, I was a film major back in the day. I'm a film school dropout. Because my instructor said I'd have no problem making it in the industry, and of course now I'm not in the industry. So, but yeah, I mean, I was just being a smartass to your post, and that's why I'm doing Honor Among Thieves.
You remind me of the time in high school I wrote a report on a non-existent book, and the teacher started calling me on in class to answer questions about it. Which was somehow more difficult than if I had just, Oh gosh! Yeah. All righty.
So that's why when I started to crap my pants over here when Lala over there was talking about being the neuroscience and the philosophy behind the movie and all this stuff and getting me all deep, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna make a crack at a joke about a popcorn movie. I don't know.
If you ever want to feel good about what you're writing, just read anything I wrote for the first two, where I'm taking like gratuitous cheap shots and making like really weird pop culture references about obscure movies from 60 years ago. It's like even if you hadn't read the outside cover, like, well, I can tell who owns the company. So yes. And for those of you that have been with us through the hour, we hope that you've noticed that we are a bit passionate about film here, and we're not shy about advocating for our movies. And this is the kind of fun that and good debate that you're going to see if you pick up any of our books, and if you make the third one happen. So let me get that link up here. And oh, by the way, a couple of notes for those of you who haven't had a chance to check out the Kickstarter yet. If you missed getting subversive sci-fi and transgressive horror the first time around, you got an opportunity to back us to the Kickstarter and get these in all three extant formats. I would hold up the PDF and the EPUB edition in my hand if I could, but you can get this in all three versions for an insanely low price, and will help us make a third book happen, which you can get as well. And let's just say, for the sake of our argument, that maybe you heard all this and you're like, well, darn it, now I want to know more about The Fall and New York. Well, guess what? On our other reward levels, you can back us, and we will write about the movie that you want us to write about. That's right. You back us, and we will write about the movie that you want in the movie. We had two essays picked by our backers in transgressive horror, and we had, as I recall, 4, maybe 5, middle-aged summer break brain, movies that got talked about in subversive sci-fi just because our backers put them there. So if you look at our...
Somebody wants me to write about She's Having a Baby.
Hey, if somebody wants The Fall, Shannon can write it instead of me.
Oh God, no! You do that. Then again, if I don't do that, I'll probably get stuck watching New York again. Which again, good movie. does not need to be that long though. So
The Fall is so hard to buy anywhere now because it did so badly. I've tried to buy it. I've tried to look for it. It's as hard as it's as hard to find as it took me. Sorry, it's as hard to find as it was for me to find the Prisoner DVDs back in the day, which took me like 7 years, and it took me like it took me forever to find Lane anime. And yes, I do like these weird things. Okay, but yes, Prisoner is one of my favorites. I rewatch it from time to time. I recently finished a rewatch party with a friend of mine where we watched an episode a week for a few weeks and finished it up. But I love The Prisoner, and it took me like 7 years to find a copy of my own after I discovered it. Wow. So, but The Fall is so hard to find. I'm still trying to find a decent copy.
Yeah, you remind me, one of the things we're doing for Fantastic Flops is that unfortunately between book number 2 and this one, we lost a longtime friend and collaborator, Darren Watts. And the last conversation that Darren and I had, he pitched to me doing this movie Inchan, which literally has never been released on any streaming or physical format, and other than it popping up on an obscure cable channel owned by the cult that made the movie in the first place 20 years ago. It's literally not been seen by anybody, and that was the film that Darren wanted to do. So I'm taking Jaren's perspective, and I'm writing the essay for him, and we're donating the writer's fees to Darren's 2 favorite charities in his name. And I just started my first draft on that, and then I got to my standard, here's how you find this movie if you want to watch it. And I had to artfully say that, well, there's no legal way, and we certainly don't advocate you doing anything that would violate federal copyright laws to see this film. So yeah, it's one of the more artful things I've had to write in my time. So yes, I know what you're coming. Yeah.
Yeah, so last time I went to search for The Fall on Amazon, it was out. Now you can get a DVD copy for $38, but the Blu-ray is $187. $187.
Egads.
Yeah, and $37. I don't even know if it's a trusted a trusted option, $37.99, because it's saying that the other DVD options are like $70 here. So it is not easy to get, because I have not paid $70 for a DVD or $40 for a DVD.
Well, we're getting
region either, which is always a thing. Sorry.
Well, we're inching up on the hour mark here. So, and the best talk show tradition, I give everybody a chance to talk about other things they're working on. And Dan, you're the easiest one, so we'll go first here. And okay, you're doing Catacombs and Comedians.
Catacombs and Comedians. I've got the website's up. You can check it out there. We're on all the social medias at Catacomedians. And that is my live actual play on stage, front of an audience, Dungeons and Dragons, with stand-up comedians. And in fact, the show we just did last Tuesday is available on YouTube on the Catacombs and Comedians website.
And did you mention where your next one is?
It is next Sunday, a week from tonight, at Stand Up Live in Huntsville, Alabama. Mm-hmm. And then I've got the following Wednesday, I'm at Central Cinema in Knoxville, Tennessee. And other than that, please go check out Star Marshals. This is very much a labor of love, and I've got all sorts of neat goodies to give away if you get the physical like fan club kit with it. The Junior Star Marshals Cadet Club membership kit has all sorts of things that I showed off on the Banff podcast that the professor saw some stuff, patches, buttons, coloring books, all sorts of fun stuff. Because I create properties like comic books and role-playing game material content just so I can create merchandise and swag for them. That's my goal. But yeah, starmarshals.com or what you see there, zoop.gg/c/starmarshals. Go pledge. We got another 2 or 3 weeks left of it. I would love to get this book made. It's done. I've got the physical book. It's done. I just got to, try to get my money, try to cover the cost that it already cost me to get it made. But go get that book, and may you all make your saving throws.
All righty. All right, Shannon, I know you have to go out and get a big scoop. But before you do that, what are some things you're working on you want to tell the folks about?
Not doing a whole lot in the gaming and sci-fi fantasy world. Actually, the only other thing I'm doing right now is I do regular freelance for Cardinal News, which is based out of Roanoke, Virginia. It is run by former Roanoke News staffer, Roanoke Times news staffers. And if you've ever said to yourself, "What's going on in Southwest and Southside Virginia?" I live around the world, somewhere around the world, but I want to know. Come see it. It is online. It is all free. They do accept donations. It is kind of like donation driven, and in that we're running on charity kind of thing. And I write about various topics regarding life in Southwest Virginia, and currently working on a piece about cheese. A local cheese maker, Meadow Creek Dairy. Which, if you like cheese, check them out. But that's pretty much what I've got going on.
You know, as your editor, I would have proved that story so fast.
I pitched it and he was like, "Yeah, sounds good." So now I'm doing a piece on cheese.
All righty. And Alice, you're literally inside our heads with the neuroscience. What else are you up to?
At the moment, there's not much that I can talk about for public consumption. I know that some of you know about Babies with Knives. If you guys want to keep going and watching and learning about games there, that's great. But I have not been making videos for that in almost a year and a half, 2 years. And I know that some of you may be asking why, and just a lot of personal reasons. But Brandon and I do hope to return to Babies with Knives when he finishes nursing school, if we can get other aspects stabilized. Other than that, I just kind of freelance for various projects when things come up. Like somebody needs me to write up something for some book, I just do it. And I don't really self-promote. I'm terrible about that. My name is in some places and I'm just like, I did that? Cool. I don't self-promote. And I'm terrible, especially since people need me to. But I'm like, I don't have a following. I don't know what I did. It's here. I did help here. Great.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming in tonight and talking about your books, and thank you all for sharing your talents with Ghost Show. And thanks everybody who backed us and got our Kickstarter off to a fabulous first week. We're already I think we're already 34% funded, and it hasn't been going for even a whole week yet. So and if you pledged, thank you, and please keep spreading the URL because we appreciate your support, and there are probably more people in your life that would love this book, and with their dollars we can help make the book a thing. And thank you all for tuning in tonight on the Ghost Show, and we'll be back at this time this week, same Ghost Show time, same Ghost Show channel, with more fabulous people working on this fabulous book. Until then, thank you, spread the URL, and good night.